Deep within the scorched, unforgiving expanse of the Mojave Desert lies a place that, well, officially didn't even exist for over half a century. A place completely shrouded in absolute darkness. A place where the lines between cutting-edge military reality and, otherworldly fiction completely bleed together. Welcome to The Redacted. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the absolute most secretive military installation on Earth. When the CIA recently declassified archives of Cold War spy satellite imagery, analysts found something incredibly chilling. Pictures of Groom Lake, the site we all know as Area 51, taken by American KH-4 spy satellites on December 21, 1968, they were physically cut out of the film strips, replaced by a black void and just 6 words, frames edited from original negative. This isn't just some wild internet theory. This is the terrifying, documented reality of a government cover-up so deep that even the people tasked with analyzing American spy satellite imagery literally didn't have the clearance to see it. Which naturally leads us to the ultimate question. If they're willing to manually slice frames out of historical records, what is the government really hiding out there in the Nevada desert? Come with me as we uncover the redacted truth. Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand the myth of the black site, we have to start with the verified, declassified history of this facility. You see, Area 51 wasn't actually built for aliens. It was built for the Cold War. Back in 1955, the CIA needed a completely remote location to test the U-2 spy plane. This was an aircraft designed to fly higher than anything else on Earth, to spy on the Soviet Union. They actually sarcastically nicknamed the barren salt flat Paradise Ranch. Then, by 1960, they were expanding the runway to a massive 8,500 feet for Project Oxcart, which was the development of the supersonic A-12 aircraft. The secrecy around all of this was so paramount that in 1973, when astronauts aboard the Skylab space station accidentally photographed the base from orbit, it sent the CIA into an absolute panic. They were desperate, absolutely desperate to keep this place off the map.
And honestly, that desperation is still reflected in the extreme security measures active today. Employees don't just drive to work. They are flown in daily from Las Vegas on unmarked passenger jets with a single red stripe, operating under the call sign Janet. And the exclusionary box of airspace above the base, it's so restricted that even military pilots training nearby risk severe disciplinary action if they cross that line. The perimeter isn't just guarded by men in camouflage authorized to use lethal force. The desert itself is wired with buried motion sensors. When you build a wall of secrecy that is literally this impenetrable, it naturally breeds conspiracy. And the sheer irony of this whole situation is just palpable. It perfectly illustrates the total disconnect between highly classified aviation and the birth of modern UFO folklore. Think about it. In the 1950s, commercial flights capped out around 20,000 feet. But suddenly, people and airline pilots were seeing these silver objects soaring at over 60,000 feet. When the U-2's silver wings reflected the setting sun, it literally gave the aircraft a fiery, unearthly appearance. Civilian reports of fiery flying saucers flooded into the Air Force's Project Blue Book. The military cross-referenced these sightings with their secret flight logs and realized their own classified test flights were causing the UFO panic. But because of national security, they couldn't exactly tell the public the truth. They had to say it was just a weather phenomenon. And just like that, the seeds of the myth were sown.
But those seeds wouldn't fully bloom until the late 1980s. That's when a single voice stepped out of the shadows and changed Area 51 forever. Let's look at the whispers from S4. So, in 1989, a man named Bob Lazar gave an anonymous television interview, hidden in silhouette. He claimed he was a physicist hired to reverse engineer alien technology. Now keep in mind, these are his unverified allegations, but they were explosive. He claimed to have worked at a clandestine underground facility carved right into a mountain called S4, just south of Area 51. There, he said he was shown up to 9 different crashed or captive flying discs. One of them, which he called the Sport model, apparently had a seamless metallic consistency, kind of like liquid titanium. He even claimed he saw tiny seats inside the craft, built for beings that the base personnel eerily referred to as the kids. Listen to his exact words from that era. The propulsion system is a gravity propulsion system. The power source is an antimatter reactor. This technology does not exist at all. The sheer scale of what he was claiming here is exactly why it sent absolute shockwaves through the public and the media. He wasn't just saying we found a weather balloon. No, he was stating as absolute fact that the United States government was in possession of vehicles that bent gravity and manipulated time. Central to Lazar's wild claim was a fuel source he called Element 115. He alleged the government had 500 pounds of this highly stable, naturally occurring heavy element that powered these antimatter reactors. And this is where we get a fascinating collision of sci-fi and real science. Because decades later, in 2003, Russian scientists actually discovered element 115, later named moscovium. It was even officially added to the periodic table in 2013. However, to put that into perspective, real-world element 115 is a highly radioactive synthetic element that decays in less than a single second. That's obviously a far cry from the stable spacecraft fuel Lazar described. While skeptics absolutely point to this, along with some major discrepancies in his educational background as proof he's a fabulist, his story ignited a massive firestorm of public obsession that the government simply could no longer ignore. But while the public was busy looking up at the sky for flying saucers, the true darkness of Area 51 was actually happening right here on the ground. We have to talk about the very real cost of all this secrecy.
$25,000. It wasn't a performance bonus, it wasn't a grant, it was cold, hard hush money.
And this brilliantly illustrates the extreme lengths the government went to. On May 24, 1963, a highly classified A-12 spy plane codenamed Article 123 crashed near Wendover, Utah. The pilot ejected safely, thank goodness, but the CIA instantly went into full damage control mode. They falsely told the press it was just a standard F-105 Thunder Chief. But what about the locals who actually saw the wreckage? Well, to dissuade two nearby farmers from getting any closer, the government literally told them the plane was carrying atomic weapons. No joke. Then, local law enforcement and a passing family were threatened to keep quiet and handed exactly $25,000 in cash each to buy their absolute silence.
But as you might guess, hush money doesn't solve everything. The absolute secrecy surrounding the base eventually took a tragic human toll. In the 1990s, former Area 51 workers actually sued the government. They alleged that highly toxic materials and stealth coatings were being illegally burned in open trenches at the base, exposing workers to deadly fumes that caused severe illnesses and even death. Now, they weren't asking for alien secrets. They just wanted to know what chemicals they were exposed to so their doctors could treat them properly. In response, the government ruthlessly invoked the state secrets privilege to block the lawsuit. And when a federal judge rejected that argument, President Bill Clinton stepped in directly. He issued a presidential determination that officially exempted the facility from environmental disclosure laws. Just like that, the lawsuit was dismissed. The workers got absolutely nothing. Consider these words from U.S. Congressman Lee Hamilton, who was actually investigating the matter at the time. The Air Force is classifying all information about Area 51 in order to protect themselves from a lawsuit. I want you to really let that sink in for a second. National security wasn't just being used to hide spy planes anymore. It was legally weaponized to bury an environmental and human health disaster. This right here is the true, terrifying power of the black site. Which brings us to the redacted truths of the matter. Because when a government operates with absolutely zero accountability for half a century, it inadvertently births an uncontrollable modern mythology. 2 million. That is the staggering number of people who RSVP'd yes to a joke Facebook event back in 2019 titled Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us. Now sure, while only a few thousand actually showed up to the Nevada desert for what basically turned out to be a bizarre music festival, that staggering number represents something much more profound. It shows the massive cultural obsession created by decades of strict government denial. The secrecy basically became a vacuum in the public, while we filled it with aliens. So, the crucial point here is comparing the myth to the reality. The myth, heavily popularized by Bob Lazar, is that scientists at Area 51 were busy reverse engineering captured extraterrestrial flying saucers. But the reality of Cold War espionage is honestly just as fascinating. We know for a fact that in the late 1960s, Area 51 was actively reverse engineering a captured Soviet MiG-21 fighter jet that the US had acquired from Israel. They weren't studying aliens in those hangars. They were studying our most dangerous earthly adversaries, meticulously tearing down their technology to figure out how to defeat them in the skies over Vietnam. To summarize what we actually know was hiding behind those gates, we have the legendary U-2 and A-12 spy planes. We have the F-117A Nighthawk, literally the world's first true stealth aircraft, developed in absolute darkness to be entirely invisible to radar. And we have the Foreign Materials Exploitation Program, which was testing acquired enemy aircraft. These incredibly advanced, highly sensitive projects absolutely required the massive, deadly, exclusionary box of Groom Lake's airspace. But here's the thing. The base didn't close when the Cold War ended. The perimeter is still guarded by motion sensors and armed men today. The Janet flights still land every single day. The airspace is still incredibly lethal to enter. So I leave you with this final thought. If the alien claims are merely a convenient distraction, a mythology the government is totally happy to let us obsess over, what redacted truths are still buried in the desert today? What is currently sitting in those hangars right now, just waiting for the cover of darkness?